can't just take an oil and gas rig and apply it in a ground source heat pump market. The cost per meter has to be extremely low. The cost out of the oil and gas equipment and applied in the right environment. We have the reel sitting directly above the borehole. There's only a few rigs in oil and gas that are built like that. That market is expanding rapidly. It's designed to drill day in and day out. Once you roll the rig off the low loader, in less than 10 minutes you are set up and ready to drill. It has everything that you need to do the drilling, so there's only basically one person operating the drill rig.
Welcome to Geothermal Unleashed, the podcast where we dive into the frontier of geothermal energy and its role in the global energy transition. I'm Elizabeth Cambry with the Valorec New Energies team, and I am here to help spotlight the innovators, technologies, and stories driving geothermal forward. Today, I'm excited to welcome Soren Soe, the co-founder of CoilRig, who's based in South Australia. Welcome to the show, Soren. I'm really happy to have you. We met at last year's Geothermal Rising event, and we had such a great conversation. I would love for you to kick things off by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself, your background, your education, and how you came to found CoilRig.
Thanks for that, Elizabeth. Yes, my background is mechanical engineering. I'm from out of Europe, so I grew up in Denmark, a little country in Scandinavia, and got involved in drilling equipment and drilling rigs very quickly. So basically, most of my career has been building drilling rigs ground up, all sorts of drilling rigs, not only geothermal and equipment from mining, but also water well and geotechnical equipment. So a fairly broad range, and coiled tubing drilling equipment as well. I didn't stay in Denmark all my career. I have been working in Poland for bigger companies, managing drill rig factories there. Moved to China. I've lived in Poland, worked quite a bit in the US, and now I'm in Australia started out 12 years ago in a bit of an R&D research environment, more than the commercial side that I've been part of most of my career.
Wonderful. Okay, so tell us though, how did you found CoilRig? What is the story behind that?
You can say that we've been developing these you can say compact coil tubing rigs for quite a period before I came to Australia, but also here in Australia. And you can say that market for smaller compact coil tubing rigs that has pretty much everything on board on them for different applications than oil and gas has expanded. And here in Australia, we've been involved in that through the research arm of it, working from MINEX, CRC, and the universities developing compact small coil tubing units for the mining industry. And we had quite a lot of success drilling here in Australia in all sorts of formations. And you can say the experience we've gained here and the exposure we have to the market has been driving part of that. The research side of it is kind of ramping down as those small coil tubing rigs for the mining get commercialized. And then we opened up to see what other possibilities there were. And then this market for shallow geothermal drill rigs is kind of really going ahead in North America for the installation of ground source heat pumps. And a couple of years ago we founded CoilRig, and that has been a steep journey. You can say starting in late 2023. And throughout 2024, developing the products, building it this year, and starting sending equipment to North America. Yeah.
That's very exciting. Okay, so I have seen a coiled tubing unit. My background is well services, so fracking, coiled tubing was always right next to us. And then I've seen a rig, but I haven't seen them combined. Can you describe what the CoilRig consists of?
Basically, the coiled tubing rigs we are building are not the big rigs that you see in oil and gas. They're way more compact. It's typically small track-mounted units that is more the size of what you would call a conventional drill rig for water well drilling. They're about 60,000 pounds in weight. They can fit on the back of a low loader truck and still be transportable on the road as one load. The rig itself difference from, you can say, a conventional drill rig by using coil tubing. You mentioned it, right? So the biggest difference between all the small drill rigs and the coil rig is that we're using coil tubing, so one continuous string of drill tube instead of all the drill rods. As I said, it has everything that you need to do the drilling. So there's only basically one person operating the drill rig. So it has the control, the injector, the pumping, the facility to lift the mast up and down. So everything is really compact. Once you roll the rig off the low loader, in less than 10 minutes you are set up and ready to drill. So it's not an operation you would know from oil and gas where you need to get a pumping unit in and all sorts of stuff. It's all on the rig. The only extra piece of equipment you need is you can say solid removal unit to actually clean and process the drilling fluid, because we're running it in a closed loop, because we can't have the drilling fluid running all over the drill site when we're drilling among suburban American households. Yeah.
I'm really curious, how big or what does the market look like for just using coiled tubing for drilling in general?
I think if there's difference if you're looking for a global market or the whole market. I think in if you're looking for coil tubing in total, roughly depending a bit on the time, there's about 2,000 or just over 2,000 at times coil tubing rigs in total in the world, and the market for smaller coil tubing rigs has been it's been quite small over the years, but it is expanding, including in the market for drilling for ground source heat pumps. So you can say there's probably a good handful of smaller coil tubing units for installation of ground source heat pumps. And you can say if you're looking at North America, there's probably between 300 and 400 drill rigs all the time in that part of the world drilling for ground source heat pump, but it's really expanding. That market is expanding rapidly with all the challenges you have in an expanding market for skill sets and equipment and so forth. So you can say that's the market. It's predicted to be much bigger in the coming years, and of course any growth are influenced by political decisions and however it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, very exciting. Okay, so you mentioned the shallow, maybe district heating when we look at geothermal space. I mean, could you use a coil tubing rig for closed loop geothermal or next generation geothermal, or is it really limited to the shallow district heating type of geothermal?
The coil rig is a tool developed specifically for let's call it the shallow, the heat exchange drilling. So it's not used for what we call energy extraction. Could a coil tubing rig be used for that? Absolutely. It would require it to typically drill deeper, potentially make, you can say, larger holes. You can, and I would say drilling deep with a coil tubing rig is typically not the biggest challenge. So that can definitely be done, and a lot of the coil tubing rigs you would be familiar with in the oil and gas can drill very deep. This one is, you can say, developed to. You can say that the majority of the market is probably around 500 feet depth, but our rig can easily reach beyond 1,000 feet. So depth is not really the biggest challenge drilling with coil tubing rig, and of course the stuff we've been developing for mining goes deeper as well. It's just the market for the installation of ground source heat pumps is typically to be cost efficient in that range. Talking about costs, I might also just add that you can't, just the way the market works and the cost involved, you can't just take an oil and gas rig and apply it in a ground source heat pump market or in a mining environment for that sake, because the cost per meter has to be extremely low. So what we had to do, also developing it for mining, is really taking the cost out of the oil and gas equipment and apply it in the right environment. So the equipments can have some similarities, even though it looks different, but they're fundamentally quite different, except, of course, both types of drilling equipment are using coil tubing drilling. And in oil and gas that you're familiar with, 80% or more of the rigs in that market are used for what we call workover. So it's, you can say, maintenance and cleaning and of existing boreholes. The equipment we are building is for open hole drilling. So it's a fresh hole every time we start. There's very little re-entry in any of the holes. So it is for drilling. So as I can say, what we have done is an example of driving costs down. The typical way that a coil tubing rig that you would be familiar with, you got the reel on the ground and it goes over a gooseneck and into the ground. We have the reel sitting directly above the borehole, and there's only a few rigs in oil and gas that are built like that. So we're basically tripling the life of the coil tubing, just as an example on how we have been driving costs down to operate the equipment.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So, how fast can you drill with a coil tubing or a coil rig? And what
Yeah,
influences the rate of penetration?
I will give you the answer from anyone in the drilling industry. It depends, but when that is said, we compare us to drill rigs using drill rods, and there are some direct benefit from that. I mean, if you're drilling a 500-600 feet hole with any drill rig, if you're using the conventional 20 feet drill rods, you would have to put 30 drill rods together to get into the hole and take 30 drill rods apart coming out of the hole, and you have to stop your flow, whether that's air or drill mud, to clean the hole and all of that. So before you've drilled that hole, you've spent, you can say, almost, or if not more than an hour just adding and taking drill rods away. Where in coil tubing drilling, you're continuously progressing the borehole forward. Also, because you're circulating your drilling medium, fluid or air all the time, you have less chance of your borehole collapsing. So there's some first order productivity improvements, but you can say it's between 25 to even 40% faster to drill with a piece of coil tubing equipment compared to a conventional drill rig. So I think the answer, if you want to have a round number, is about 30% more productive when it comes to that. It doesn't really stop there as well. Just because no one is touching the drill string when you are drilling, there are some, the safety benefits. You don't have people or machinery changing drill rods all the time. So we see a very high increase in safety around the equipment as well. So you would have less safety incidents. I mean, here in Australia, still over 40% of all the reportable injuries in the drilling industry is people getting their hands, you can say, entangled in drill rods in some form. Even though we have a fair bit of rod handlers here, people still manage to get their hands injured. So as I said, over 40% are hand injuries, and we don't see that using coil tubing drilling. And also, if you have to re-enter the borehole, let's say you pull out of your borehole, and if you in coil tubing, you can pressurize your borehole, you can keep pumping as you come out, which is a bigger challenge using drill rods. So that's, as I said, the chance of a borehole collapsing is less. But let's say that the last couple of meters of your borehole collapses before you're installing your loop. You will only find out unless you check the depth of your borehole. But if you send your loop in and you're let's say 10 feet short or 20 feet short, and you have to re-drill it because that's the specification of the borehole, you'll have to spend another hour with a conventional drill rig, putting drill rods on and off. In coil tubing drilling, you can get to the bottom of that hole in 3-4 minutes, drill it out and go back out. So there are these productivity enhancements. The last thing I would mention is what we have done. We have, you can say, it's quite automated the way we've done it. All the rod handling is kind of happening by itself. So we could see that we could easily see that it is, you still need an operator to set it up, but in the future you could have one operator maybe looking after more than one rig on one drill site if he can time the way he's doing the drilling. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a lot there. On it, like typical, when you're working on typical projects, what are the most frequent technical challenges that you encounter and you deal with?
I think one of the frequent challenges is when you get to a new area and the drilling formation changes, the first hole or the first couple of holes, you need to adjust your drilling methods. And if you have conventional drillers that's normally using drill rods, they have, you can say, they have their way of you can say, adjusting the drilling method and the drilling fluid to what is, you can say, what the formation is actually like, how much casing you need to put in, or if you don't have to put casing in. So it takes a couple of holes to calibrate your drilling method. In coil tubing, you can still put quite a bit of weight on your bits. In our case, as I said, we have the drill string right above the bit, so you can push very hard on your bit if you need to. However, you're rotating your bit with a downhole motor, and they can have some torque limitations. So I would say it's about learning if the formation is hard, when you have to change to a percussive drilling method. And we're drilling with fluid hammers to drill hard rock, and we're doing that here in Australia. So it's about learning when you have to change your drilling system to hard rock drilling. I mean, it's not a challenge to do that. You need to change your bit to a hammer as well, and a different bit. So that's typically learning at what point in time you have to do that, if you have to do it.
Wait, I don't know. What is a hammer bit? I know what a PDC
It's
is
not a
now.
hammer. It's you might have heard about air drilling, where you have an air hammer or a down the hole hammer, where you're using air to make a percussion movement. So you're basically breaking rock by percussion. Instead of just having a bit rotating to, you can say, to cut the ground. The reason why you might not be too familiar with it is in oil and gas, you normally do not use hammers for drilling. Typically not. Because in oil and gas, and the formations you can be drilling in oil and gas and the formations you can be drilling in shallow geothermal and in mining are very different. As we used to say in the mining industry, the oil and gas people do not even know what hard rock drilling is, because they call some cement forms hard, and there is no hard cement. So you would need a very efficient drilling method to cut rock if you encounter that. If you're drilling in Canada or big parts of the US are also full of rock, and percussive drilling is the most efficient way to drill if you have a formation that can fracture by percussion. So it's just a drilling method adapted from that industry into the drilling. But as already today, conventional systems drilling with air in shallow geothermal for rock drilling. Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about the projects that you're working on. I mean, I don't know what you can share with us, but I am really curious just to understand. We've got residential geothermal. You've got like what Eversource is doing in Boston with their loop. What are typical projects that you can use the CoilRig for this type of shallow geothermal?
I think the answer is pretty much all of them.
Okay.
The first projects that we are part of are residential geothermal projects, but typically more than 5 boreholes in those installations. You can still mobilize and drill 1 or 2 geothermal wells in a smaller house if you need to do that. Where I think it really will strive is if you have a number of boreholes. So if you have a larger commercial project or a data center that needs cooling, I think that's really where it's because this is designed as a production unit. It's designed to drill day in and day out and just, you can say, complete the drilling. Any operator would have slightly different work patterns. What you can do with our rig is you can drill the hole, and while you're still keep parked over the borehole, you can install your geo loop there to ensure that the hole hasn't collapsed when you install it, and then move on. And installing the geo loop typically only takes a short time. But I also know that in other projects they do all the drilling. And then they install the geo loops afterwards. There are different work patterns, and you can choose what you want to do with the CoilRig. But from finishing one hole to moving on to the next one, you don't have to take the tooling off. It's ready to go. You just put the mast down with the tooling in, drive 20 feet typically to the next borehole and put your mast up and start drilling. It's something that's done in 5 minutes. You can say finishing one hole and moving on to the next. So it's really made for efficient productivity with lean in mind. Yeah.
So, okay, what is CoilRig's business model? Are you selling units for geothermal developers to buy and they're going to go do the drilling, or do you offer the drilling and provide the services?
We are currently selling the drilling equipment to drilling contractors. It's typically drilling contractors that work for the installers or the bigger companies. That's a typical setup, but there are various versions of that, of course. But we're basically selling the equipment and can maintain it for the operators that are doing the drilling. That's how it works.
So do you know the location of your first project, where it is? I'm sure you do, in North America?
Yes, it's North America. It's on the East Coast.
Okay.
It's on the East Coast, yeah.
Okay. I imagine when you look at your total available market based on projects that are in the shallow geothermal, thousands of projects. Is it easy to go in and displace traditional drilling that's used for these shallow wells? Do you think this is going to be an easy market to go after?
I think I would say from a technology and an operational point of view, it's fairly easy. It requires a slightly different setup in the drilling industry, and I've been part of the industry for a long time, so I can allow myself to be hard on all of us. The industry is extremely conservative for the right reasons, because you can't just change everything and hope for the same outcome. But if you're looking at a 30% productivity improvement plus a few other things, it's worth doing. And most we're working with some of the first movers and those that want a competitive edge in the market, and they're taking it on, and we of course working with them to give them the additional education they need to have, or training around coiled tubing and all of that. But it is fairly easy. We've done that here in Australia, where I would say typically water well drillers are quite adaptive to this drilling method. You can say if you have some training for a week on site with them, they get it. It's not that it is such a big surprise, because the drilling method, even though you're not using a rotation unit, they kind of get it, if I can put it like that.
Yeah.
The feedback we get is that they probably have to sign up to their gym membership again, because they don't spend the whole day working hard. A really good busy day on a coiled tubing drill site seems pretty lazy, because the driller is just there at his levers. He's not slinging drill rods. I mean, it's only if you have If you have challenges with your drilling fluid, you have to maintain that and
Yeah.
add mix extra drilling fluid. But the conventional drilling and if you don't have rod handlers, you are lifting a lot of drill rods every day, and that can take a toll on. They can take a toll, especially when drillers pass 50 years, right? Then you can see that they
Yeah.
have been drilling for a number of years. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that you have got a background in mining. What lessons or practices from the mining industry are applicable for geothermal?
A lot of them, I would say, because what drive the integration of these small coil tubing units in the mining industry was a scream for productivity improvements and you can say higher completion rates in especially in exploration drilling, and you can say in the mining it was also, you can say, uh, a requirement to have a very small footprint, and so that was the fundamental drivers behind implementing these small coil tubing units in mineral exploration. And there's some similarity when it comes to that. The actual drilling equipment is quite different, but there are, of course, learnings that we have integrated in mining in those rigs that can be, you can say, transferred into the shallow geothermal. Yeah.
That's really cool. Okay, so
Hmm.
we met in Reno earlier, like just a couple months ago in October at where were we? The Children's Museum at Geothermal
Yeah.
Rising Conference 2025. Was that your first time attending?
It was the first time at that conference. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, what was your take? What did you find to be the most exciting at the conference?
I think it was a really good conference, and there was a lot of you can say individuals from the geothermal industry there. It's kind of, I'm looking a little bit at the geothermal industry as two camps.
Okay.
It's either what you call the energy production or the energy, or the ground source heat pump world. It's two different worlds, but of course there's overlap in tapping into this almost free energy that we're all walking around on, right? Um, I think, and the session that I was part of on the panel for new drilling technologies for geothermal drilling was the highlight of the conference that I was part of. We were, you can say, we were a number of panel members in those discussions, and there was at least three coil tubing companies involved in that panel discussion, and there was some really good sharing around how the coil tubing rigs from the smaller coil tube rigs is finding their way into the shallow geothermal drilling. And so it is moving forward. So that was definitely the highlight, to just get confirmed that this is happening in North America, which is really great. Yeah.
So are you plugged into another organization then that is more catered to the shallow geothermal, aside from
Yeah,
geothermal rising?
we're part of, we're a supporter of New York Geo in New York. So the shallow geothermal, and also part of the Geothermal Drillers Association in the US. And then, yeah, you can say some of the other partnerships we have are here in Australia. But let me just clarify for starters, the shallow geothermal drilling market in Australia is, let's call it, close to non-existing, so at this point in time. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, maybe that will change. All
Maybe
right,
that will change. Yeah.
maybe. Where do you envision your coil rig technology evolving to in the next 5 years?
We, of course, would like to see the technology spread out over North America, but what we are putting a lot of effort into at the moment is the automation part of it. So the way we have built the rig, it's prepped for automation. So we could see it, if not autonomous, then semi-autonomous, as it already is. And also, because of the way it's set up, the guys back in the office can follow what's going on. There is full over-the-air communication with any with anyone who wants to, who is set up or have permission to look what's going on. Of course, there's different levels because there are a number of sensors on the drill rig, ruggedized sensors we have, that has proven their worth in drill rigs over the world, so that you can sit on a distance. Follow what's going on is helpful, of course, for the people managing the drilling. They can follow what's going on site. It's you can monitor what's going on the actual machine. You can say, so you can follow maintenance schedules. You can early predict if something is not going quite right. You don't have to wait till it breaks or and all of that. So I think that's one direction I think it will take, especially with a skill shortage that we are finding. We don't need more than 2 persons on a geothermal drill site to do the whole thing. And there are drill sites where there's only 2 persons on site per rig. But there are also operations where there are considerable more people involved in doing, as we call it, a 2-man job. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. All right, my final question for you today. If our listeners want to learn more or collaborate, what's the best way to reach you or see CoilRig in action?
Well, go to our websites, where coilrig.com. That'll take you right to where all the contact information is. We've had a few demonstrations here in Australia, but we'll have more to show for in North America in Q1 next year. So that's a way. But send us an email, and we're on LinkedIn and stuff like that as well, of course. But the website is probably a good starting point.
Wonderful. Well, Soren, this was a very engaging conversation today, and I want to thank you for joining me. And I want to thank all of our listeners for joining us on this episode of Geothermal Unleashed. I hope today's conversation with Soren has offered fresh insights and sparked new ideas about the future of geothermal energy. As we continue to navigate the energy transition, it's clear that geothermal has a powerful role to play, one that's only just beginning to be fully realized. Until next time, keep challenging assumptions, exploring new frontiers, and working together to unlock the full potential of geothermal. Thank you.